The one.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Today we are on day 3 of farm animal nutrition and welfare. And today Professor Clive Phillips is going to speak to us on characteristics of livestock nutrition and intensive production systems.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prasenjit. If I just get the sets of slides up. So what we covered yesterday and the day before was really looking, maybe it's better if I sit. Yeah, we were looking yesterday and the day before primarily at what is welfare, and then yesterday we were covering really what are those links between nutrition and welfare, what is undernutrition all about, what is malnutrition all about, what nutrients might be deficient and why. And today I want to move on to look in a little bit more detail about the specific nutritional characteristics of the major livestock species. Are you two okay down the end there? Do you want to move up here a little bit? They're happy? Okay, well I am going to stand because I don't like sitting for hours on end. You sure? Good, that'll be better. Right. And what about our veterinary friends? Are they coming today, do you know?
I think everybody is coming.
Okay, right.
But Khushbu is not coming.
Khushbu's not coming, she told me that, yes. Okay. So we're going to run through the major species, cattle, sheep, pigs, poultry and horses, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the nutritional characteristics. We did talk a little bit about that yesterday. We mentioned the complementarity of the different species in terms of their grazing, what we call herbivory, in other words the grasses which they eat. But I'll amplify that today. So the objectives are really to describe the evolution of the species, the morphology and the behavioral characteristics of the major livestock species, consider how that relates to some of the major behavioral problems. We did think about that a little bit yesterday in relation to cattle. We'll consider it for all the major livestock species today. Do ask questions because it's not an area which is commonly considered in this way. If you look at standard, nutrition textbooks and things, they don't usually consider the evolutionary background of the species. But coming at this topic, as I do, from a perspective of welfare and ethics, I think it tells you a lot about what the animals need to consider where they've come from, how they've evolved. So that's why I always introduce the subject by considering that first.
Can I get back to something that you spoke, I think, yesterday?
Yes. Yeah.
You said that the natural feed times for cattle
yes.
is morning and evening.
Yes.
So now my question is, if you give it feed at random various times of the day, isn't that a stress scenario for the cattle?
It's another good question. Dr. Prasenjit, he comes up with all the good ones, so, all the difficult ones, I should say. And yes, I mean, we had a research program.
My question was slightly further than that.
Right.
Because you're coming up with the evolutionary traits
yes.
of anybody, I mean, human beings included.
Yeah.
So wouldn't somebody like to fit into an evolutionary trait, which the cattle or anybody, any living being is more can more accommodate? That's my question. So feed cattle in the morning and the evening.
Yeah. How adaptive are they?
That's it.
Yeah. The evidence at the moment, I think, suggests that they are quite plastic. That they can adapt their behaviour somewhat. We talked a little bit about the stress responses to feeding patterns, and I said that as far as from the literature I'd seen, there is no strong evidence that cattle at least suffer severely from stress. you cannot detect a high cortisol concentration if you don't feed them at the right time, for instance. And there's been work done with calves and with cattle that are being transported. And yes, the transport is stressful, but depriving them of food is not. And people have argued that cattle with a huge reservoir in the rumen, that they don't need to feed all the time. At least from an emotional point of view or from a cognitive point of view, they don't need to do that. But as we were saying yesterday in some detail, I think, maintaining the function of the rumen at a consistent level is really important from a productive point of view. You know, so they easily stop producing milk as efficiently if they're underfed. On the other hand, with monogastric animals such as ourselves, so single-stomached animals, as opposed to the animals like the ruminants that have got many adapted stomachs. The monogastric animals, it is clearly shown that if you don't have your lunch at the right time, your cortisol level goes up, your stress level goes up. So there is a difference. Okay, so we're going to start with cattle. Now we did consider quite a little bit about the nearest relatives of cattle yesterday, the Gaur cattle. And I'll build on that a little bit, but I wanted just to reiterate, to emphasize again that cattle adapted as crepuscular feeders, feeding morning and night, because they want to maintain that rumen functioning optimally at all times. And they adapted essentially as animals that consume a large amount of grass and then go away, lie down and ruminate. And then most of that is in the night time. So that's their strategy. Sorry. Okay. This is, because of the photos, it's taking a while to click through, I think. And it's often imagined that cattle are just grazing animals, but they're not. They're grazing and browsing animals. We looked at the Bosgaurus cattle yesterday. They browse in the forests in India, in Malaysia. On the other hand, we can say that the dental structure for cattle is most suited to low quality feed, large amounts of low quality feed. We can see that from their broad dental arcade. So they are grazing and browsing animals. Now why is this not moving on? Okay, try a different button. And rumination is set for times when they're not feeding, so night time or the middle of the day. In the case of these Bosgaurus cattle, you can see them ruminating here. Okay. Cattle are very social species, and that will influence their response, their nutritional responses, because they like to feed together. And even the research which has been done shows that if you have a group of cattle together, they will actually eat more than if you have individual cattle. So there's a social factor there. We call it social facilitation. They don't like being isolated. They get stressed. They're a very inquisitive animal as well. And they have a dominance hierarchy. There are leaders in the herd. And when they're moving to pasture, then you have different groups of cattle in the herd as they move from one bit of pasture to another. You have your leaders, and then you have your ones right at the back. And the dominant cattle are actually in the middle. They're the sensible ones. The leaders are the ones who are being adventurous. They're being forced to move on to new pasture. The ones at the back are the sort of ones that don't want to compete for access to new pasture. The leaders are the ones in the middle.
Sir,
Yep.
social facilitation is a good thing or bad thing? Sometimes we observe on herd, if one cattle start to grunting, teeth grinding.
Yes, yeah.
Other cattle also start.
Okay.
That it is a bad or negative.
Teeth grinding. I've never seen that in cattle. In cattle?
Yeah.
Okay, why do they teeth grind? I should tell you. Yeah. I've never seen or experienced that at all. Teeth grinding. This is with the molars or the incisors. In the incisors. Okay. Well, that's strange, and it's even more strange that it's a socially facilitated behavior. And what are the circumstances of when they're doing it? Stressful conditions. Well, learn something every day. That's very interesting. Thank you for that. I mean, other animals' teeth grind. Humans' teeth grind.
When we are upset.
When you are very stressed, we teeth grind. I smashed a tooth the other day when I was after a very stressful meeting. Had to go for reconstruction. Yes, but I've never heard of cattle doing it. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay. It may be that the stress was socially contagious, not the teeth grinding. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll have a look. See. Have you looked on the internet to see if that's ever been observed before?
Yes.
I've never heard of it, but yeah, worth exploring. Okay. In terms of communication, they evolved from forest-dwelling animals, so the communication is not typically by very overt means, because in the forest there you don't use a lot of signaling, and if you do use signaling like birds, you use very bright colors. Well, cattle haven't gone down that route. They've gone down the route of covert or hidden signaling. And they use pheromones to do that. So the pheromones are produced in the body fluids, and they will communicate using the odors, those between animal messages. And they do that because they're prey animals. So the animals that are using very overt signaling are usually predators, baboons, chimpanzees, because they can afford to do that. But cattle are prey animals. They have to use hidden signaling so that they don't attract the attention of the predators. And we need to be aware of those communication mechanisms. We're not adequately aware that they are communicating in that way. Yeah, and they can convey a lot of information. Typically, it's about aggression, the need to be aggressive, or about sexual availability. So the bulls will be grazing away from the females, and there will be communication between the females that there are receptive animals. Okay, so male and female morphology, these are dimorphic animals, so the male is much bigger and stronger than the female in the case of cattle, because it's a polygynous society, so lots of males potentially having access to the females which are in estrus, and the males then fight to gain access to the females, so what we call a polygynous society. Not of great relevance to their nutrition, but I just want to paint a picture of the type of animals that cattle are. As I said, they're prey animals. Typically they're hiders. So you can still see in the world today in some of the alpine pastures where you've got females grazing with their calves, you can still see that the calves are hiding in the grassland. And there will usually be one female which is set to guard those calves. So they're hiding animals. Unlike sheep and goats, which are following animals, they're programmed to follow their mother at all times. So cows engage in what we call a creche-like behavior. And so the one cow will be protecting them, and then at times they will be nursed or fed by the cows. Okay, from a nutritional perspective, we need to consider what they can taste. So they can, sorry, can you see it all right, you two? Yeah, okay. They have 4 basic tastes which are pretty similar, somewhat similar to our own. They can taste salt, sweet objects, acid objects, and bitter objects, and they all have a particular function. Obviously, tasting salty compounds is really important to cattle, because in the wild regions of India where the Mithun cattle are present, then the only time, just about the only time you can see them is when they come to a salt lick. Cattle are critically short of sodium. I'll talk about that at a later stage. And they can taste sweet objects as well. Sorry, I should say in relation to salt, cattle can smell salt in water. There was some experimentation done in the 1960s. They could discriminate minute differences in salt concentration in water. Don't know quite how they do it, but they can. And similarly, they can distinguish feeds which have very small differences in salt concentration. Some research I did years ago where we give them an array of identical feeds, only the salt concentration was different, and they would specifically choose sodium concentrations of about 1 gram per kilogram dry matter. More than that, they'd leave. Less than that, they'd leave. They'd go for a specific salt concentration. And that specific salt concentration in calves is programmable. It's programmable by the salt intake of the mother during pregnancy, for instance. So some very important information is learnt by the fetus during pregnancy as to what the salt concentration is that they should be eating. Sweetness, obviously, although cattle by and large, normally they are not consuming the same sort of sweet products that we are consuming with simple carbohydrates, simple soluble carbohydrates. They're consuming feedstuffs with complex structural carbohydrates, polysaccharides, which are not providing that sweet taste. But cattle can still taste sweet objects. So, and you can imagine how this evolved. It was beneficial for them to find, discarded watermelons or something which taste sweet. They can also taste acid compounds to try and maintain that acid-base balance in their blood, really important. That's the hydrogen ion status of the blood. And then they can taste bitter compounds. In particular, that's important to be able to detect toxins. And we talked yesterday about plants, particularly bushes, which have secondary metabolites in them, which have tannins in them, and these protect the proteins. They stop the proteins being digested. Well, the toxins in those plants can be tasted as bitter compounds. We have lost the slides. Let's try again. Sorry. Should come up again in a minute. So the 4 tastes are basically quite similar to what we have as humans. They're actually positioned a little bit in different parts of the tongue. As far as I can recall, our sweet taste is on the tip of the tongue, theirs is at the base of the tongue. And that there are probably reasons for that because of the way in which they're consuming grass, masticating it all the time, and releasing those water-soluble carbohydrates. So grass does have some water-soluble carbohydrates, but it also has those structural carbohydrates. And in fact, cows will preferentially graze grass at times of the day when there are high levels of simple sugars or water-soluble carbohydrates, high levels in the grass. So when a cow's most likely to have a big grazing time? Anyone familiar with that from watching grazing cows?
In the morning hours and evening hours.
Yes. Well, in the evening hours, the grass has been photosynthesizing all day, and the water-soluble carbohydrate content is high. So the biggest grazing time is actually in the evening. They'll graze for 3 or 4 hours then. In the morning, yeah, maybe an hour or 2 hours, and that's because the rumen has emptied itself of all the material to be digested. So it wants to maintain that constant digestion process. But the biggest time is in the evening because the water-soluble carbohydrate content is high. So cows are pretty clever.
Sure. But I'm sure that's dependent on the region, because, like, for example, India has lots of sunshine. So
Yes.
photosynthesis goes all the time during the day.
Yes.
I mean, it's not necessarily the build-up is towards the, maybe yes, but then if you say that cows are so sensitive to quantities of salt,
Yes.
they must be very sensitive to quantities of sugars in the grass.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Because
Yeah.
in India, if you look at it, I mean, you go to the countryside and you'll see the flocks of herds of cows, cattle, they go back home. You know, they graze, they're chased out of their pens in the morning, and they go and graze, and in the evening time, maybe 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, before the sunset, they're all going back home.
Yes. And that's because they're corralled at night, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So management may well change the natural behavior of the cattle. I guess what I'm, in going through all the livestock species here, I'm thinking of how they evolved. And I think in India it probably would have been similar. The drivers for photosynthesis are temperature and light and water availability.
Which is adequate in India.
Yes.
At least the light and the temperature.
Yeah, and as long as the plant is not wilting, then it'll be photosynthesizing throughout the day, I would imagine. Yeah, but management factors will vary that. Okay, so the animal has the capacity to detect nutrients, toxic elements. I talked about lead and its impact on cattle yesterday. I would just emphasize the perception of the nutrients is relative. It's not absolute. So if we are consuming something that is very high sugar content, it may be high to me because I don't eat a lot of sugar, but to you maybe it's not high because you'd normally be eating a lot of sugar. So that those perceptive faculties, they're all relative. And as I've said, you can condition the taste perception during pregnancy. Okay, moving, yes.
Any color sensation? Color sense?
Yeah, the color sensitivity in cattle is very different to our own. We are trichromats. We have, in that visible spectrum, we have 3 sets of pigments in the short, medium and long wavelength. Cattle only have the short and medium wavelength. So the long wavelengths, which is the red end of the spectrum, their ability to see those colors is not as good. Having said that, you know, the matador in a bullfight, you know about bullfights, yeah? He still uses a bright red cape to stir up the bull. And the bull can distinguish red colors from other colors, but it just doesn't have all those sensitive pigments. But we are the exception, being trichromats, because we're primates. You know, we need to be able to pick red fruits from the trees. With cows, it's less important, but still, being able to distinguish yellow grasses from green grasses is important. So they can do that. Being able to distinguish perhaps an estrus cow which has a reddened vulva, better blood supply, they can probably do that. Being able to detect blood from an animal, they can probably do that as well. They're just not quite as good at it as we are. Our color sensation is very good. Okay, lameness and its relation to nutrition. I mention this not so much in relation to the traditional evolutionary environment of cattle, because cattle evolved with some pretty good hooves. You know, they can survive in very wet conditions. If we look at some of the Southeast Asian cattle, the Banteng, what else have we got? The Coupre, the water buffalo, yeah, will survive in very, very wet conditions underfoot. So when farmers complain that their cows are all getting lame because the conditions are wet underfoot, it's not necessarily true. What is causing a lot of the lameness problems is what we're feeding them. And this seems like a good opportunity to introduce that. It's the biggest welfare problem with cows worldwide. And the prevalence of lameness will, I don't know about India, but in much of Europe, for example, lameness will be 20–30% of the cows. Farmers underestimate the proportion of cows that are lame. And one of the reasons for that is because they're being fed the wrong diet. We can measure how well they're walking. We can measure how well they're walking by a gait scoring system, which is from a score of 1 up to a score of 5. So this is based on how well the animals are walking, how well they're turning, etc. So a gait scoring system, if we want to measure it. And some vets are using those. So what is the problem? One of the problems is that the lameness lasts quite a long time. If we look at a locomotion scoring system, how it progresses over a lameness incident. So this is time 0 is the peak lameness. The cows are having difficulty getting up, they're having difficulty walking. The lameness event will actually last about 3 to 4 months, a long time, very painful for the cows. Now, there are a number of different lameness problems, and we haven't got time to go into them all, and they're not all related to nutrition. So sole ulcers, white line lesions, this is the junction between the hoof and the sole, those two are not related to nutrition. This one, interdigital nacrobacillosis, is slightly related, well, is not really related to nutrition, it's related to the underground conditions, the ground conditions. But the big one which causes a lot of welfare problems is laminitis, which is mainly due to acidosis and the absorption of endotoxins into the bloodstream. There's also a little bit of a problem with slurry heel. This is when cows are walking in slurry a lot of the time, you know, feces and urine, and the heel bulb gets eroded, and the hoof then turns up, and you can get what we call slipper foot, where the hoof becomes greatly elongated. So that is because we're feeding them a diet producing a lot of slurry. Probably not so relevant in India as it is in Europe for house systems. So, laminitis, how does that relate to nutrition? Here's the cow's foot, okay? Within the foot we have the pedal bone within the hoof. Here's the hoof, here's the sole of the cow's foot. And what happens in a lot of laminitic conditions is that this pedal bone rotates and starts putting pressure on the corium here, causing inflammation. In addition to that, the laminae here may become hemorrhaging, and the junctions of the wall of the hoof and the corium are clearly a place where there's a lot of stress. So why does that happen? Well, what was found out about 20 years ago now was that a lot of this was related to a low rumen pH and a fluctuating rumen pH. So acid conditions in the rumen. Because when the cows are being fed large amounts of concentrate feed to try and maintain those very high milk yields, then the pH in the rumen becomes acid and it fluctuates quite rapidly. It changes rapidly. This causes absorption of bacterial endotoxins in the rumen. So you get subclinical acidosis, and then you get the vasodilation. The blood vessels are dilating and becoming without oxygen in the corium, and the laminae here fail to support the pedal bone. It sinks and you get inflammation. A very painful condition for cattle and caused by too concentrated a diet and sudden changes in the diet. Young heifers often get this problem when they come in from pasture. Start feeding them concentrate. They can't cope with the acid production in the rumen and they get laminitis. Very painful. And you see that the cow has to arch her back, usually in the hind feet, and she has to not put weight on the hind feet. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the lameness problems in cattle and their nutritional origin. Another way in which cattle are commonly kept around the world, maybe not extensively in India, would that be right? Do you have feedlots in India? No?
फीडलॉट्स है इंडिया में मतलब जहाँ कैटल को थोड़ी देर के लिए रखते हैं और सिर्फ कॉन्सेंट्रेट देते हैं मतलब पास्चर है ही नहीं.
No. Okay. Well, conditions are probably not very dissimilar from some of your cattle keeping houses. I know from your work, you know, they're lying on earth or in dusty conditions. But in Australia and in the United States, it's quite common for when finishing beef cattle to put them into yards like this, maybe with shade, maybe without shade, and you get some really big welfare problems, some of which are nutrition related. And yeah, if it's not an issue here in India, I think we'll save time and we'll move on beyond the feedlots. We'll focus again on the rangeland cattle, where we covered quite a bit yesterday about feed availability being a problem, ectoparasites, flies.
Right, just maybe a two-line summary as to what are the drawbacks of feedlots.
Feedlots,
Because
okay.
I think intensive farming is something that India is going into.
Yes, I was going to say you're intensifying your animal production a lot. It may be that you will ultimately have feedlots. They are increasing around the world. Well, the problems are quite simple, and they're mainly not so much nutrition related, although we did cover some of the behavioral problems yesterday. But the problems are essentially accumulation of mud or feces. So a lot of the problems surround the substrate which the animals are on. Too dry and it becomes very dusty, gives the animals respiratory disease. Too wet and you get very muddy conditions. In Australia, big problems with heat stress. In India, there would be as well, so we have to be really careful that they get shade. Flies, a problem. Cattle mounting each other is a problem as well, leading to penis damage and then respiratory disease as a result of dry, dusty conditions. So not so much nutrition related. On the rangeland, we talked about feed availability a lot yesterday, but ectoparasites, I must mention the flies which stop the cattle grazing, stop them feeding, the nuisance fly. We have buffalo flies as well. and these are very damaging to the welfare of the animals because of the biting of the skin, but also the disruption to grazing. And we talked a little bit about transport and the time that animals have off feed when they're coming from rangeland conditions. What I didn't do was introduce it to you by saying that animals on rangelands are necessarily a long way from where the products are being sold, usually, or at least in Australia they are, and in much of the world. And so the products have to be transported, or the animals have to be transported long distances, and that leads to welfare problems when they're off feed. Okay, we won't talk about routine operations. Here's a nutrition-related problem with cattle, which disturbs quite a lot of people in the West, is removing calves from their mothers. And the advocacy groups particularly focus on this as, isn't it natural for the calves to be suckling from their mothers? It's very damaging to the animal's welfare to take them off their mothers, and there's truth in that. I told you, I think, on the first day that recent research has demonstrated stress in the mother and the calf when they're separated, or certainly adverse feelings. And so the natural conditions, of course, where the calf is suckling the mother 5 times a day, is the ideal one for the calf. Now, what of course we do is we take milk from the cow, we dry it, make milk powder, and then we reconstitute it and feed it back to the calf. Does that seem a bit silly? Very expensive process. Why do we do that? Any thoughts?
In India,
Yeah.
एक प्रोसेस तो मैंने देखा है, ये पाउडर वाला तो नहीं देखा है। एक प्रोसेस तो मैंने देखा है कि जब वो बच्चा होता है, वो दूध निकालकर उसको किसी बर्तन में उसको पिलाते हैं, और उसका रीज़न ये होता है कि भाई वो बाई चांस बच्चा को कुछ हो गया, बच्चा नहीं बचा, तो वो दूध देने से फिर हट जाती है, तो फिर दूध देने से नहीं हटती है, क्योंकि अगर वो बच्चा उसको दूध पीता है और बच्चे को कुछ हो गया तो फिर वो दूध नहीं देती है। तो एक तरीका ये तो देखा है, ये पाउडर वाला।
So he hasn't seen the powdered milk thing happen in India, but they very often
Right.
feed the calf
Use
separately.
the mic here. You two just for the benefit of the web streamers. If
He's seen people feeding the calf separately in a vessel
Yes.
of some sort, only because they say that if the calf is directly suckling and then the calf dies, the cow dries up. But if the calf is fed separately, whether the calf survives or not, the cow is going to keep milking. That's the reason that he believes they might do this.
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, that suggests that the cow is responding to the death of the calf, which again is new for me. That's interesting.
अच्छा तरीका नहीं है, it's not good for the cow.
Not good for the cow. No. A reason which is often given as well is that when the calf is suckling the cow, the calf will bunt the udder a lot, push the udder. That makes the udder quite pendulous, it relaxes the ligaments. It is then difficult to milk the cow at the same time with a machine. Okay, so I'm thinking here of situations, situations where the cow is being milked by a machine. It's difficult to combine that with calf suckling. Okay. We seem to, probably because we got photos, we're having a problem. Okay. Feeding behavior problems, I've talked about that already. I don't think we need go into that. We've got enough to cover. And again, tongue rolling, and the bull-steer syndrome talked about that. Okay. Let's have a look at how cattle are practically fed. There are lots of different ways of restraining them from getting to the feed, because you don't want cattle walking in the feed so that they then waste it. You want them to take a mouthful of food and then eat it over the feeding trough. If they have a tendency to pull backwards after they've taken a mouthful of food, some of it falls out of their mouth and they waste it in the passageways here. So here's a little study where different feeding barriers for cattle were tested. One of the most common ones used, of course, is this tombstone one. So the cattle have to put their heads up above the tombstone before they can pull back. And these diagonal bars here require the cows to twist their heads before they pull back. This one here is interesting because the cows, as they're reaching for the feed, they push forward with their shoulders a lot. That can actually damage the feeding barrier. And so this one is, the feeding barrier is sloped forwards to take that pressure from the cows. So those are the different types of barriers. And here you can see that forward pressure by the cow as she pushes forward to try and get that fresh food. These are other circumstances where cows are fed with different types of feeding barrier. The height of this bar is really important. If it's too low, then they all get abrasions on the back of their neck. They may get lesions. So it has to be fed, kept at the right height. If you have young calves that are getting bigger and bigger, you have to keep raising the bar up to stop them having those neck problems. Okay, any questions? We've talked a lot about cattle because I spend a lot of time dealing with cattle, and they're important. They're important here in India. Any questions on cattle? Well, we're going to move on to the horse. Okay. Now that is a wild horse. So unlike with cattle, where we have no progenitors of the modern dairy cows and the modern beef cattle, with the horse we do have some of the progenitors. This is Przewalski's horse. We have also the zebra, which is quite similar. So we do have animals which are genetically quite similar to the horse to look at their characteristics. What about the evolution of the horse? They were a browsing species which evolved first of all in North America, migrated when there was still a land bridge between the Americas and Eurasia. They migrated to Asia and became adapted to grazing there. And so the horse, for a long part of its existence, was a grazing animal in those central Eurasian plains. It was then reintroduced to the Americas at a later stage. The Spanish conquistadores took horses back to the Americas, and of course they had changed quite a bit in that time. What are the key features? It has a very long muzzle. The horse has a very long muzzle. Why does it have a long muzzle? Is it so that it can take all those, it can graze comfortably? Anyone, any ideas? Why does the horse have such a long muzzle compared with, say, the sheep or the antelope? Very long muzzle.
Is it compared to the body size? I thought sheep had reasonably long muzzle compared to the body size.
I think the horse is longer. Yeah, and if we think of the environment that they live in, the central Eurasian plateau, very hot, the Central American region as well, very hot in the summer, very cold in the winter. It's essentially to moderate the temperature of the incoming air. Okay, so horses can withstand hot conditions much better than cattle. because of those nasal turbinates which moderate the temperature of the air, cooling the hot air and warming the cold air in the winter. So long muzzle with high crown teeth. Its characteristics are as a fleeing animal. You remember I said that cattle were hiders. They will, when confronted with predators, they will hide, and the bulls and the cows will corral themselves into a circle, and they will form a sort of impenetrable barrier with all the horns facing outwards. Horses are simply fleers. They run. That's why we use them for horse racing, because they're one of the fastest animals around. So the ulna and the radius have fused to make one long solid limb, which is very good for distance running. But that fusion and the fact that they don't have a cloven hoof means that they have very poor turning ability. So they run long distances. Good racing speeds, 70 kilometers an hour. We talked about this as well. They're hindgut fermenters. So they haven't got a rumen, and that is because they need to eat and run. Okay? If predators are around, they need to eat and run. Cattle are hiders. They eat and hide. And so the foregut has developed into this huge fermentation vessel. Eat lots, hide, digest it all through the rumination process. Horses eat and run. And that's partly because they're migrant animals. So they follow the feed availability. When the weather conditions are variable, they will move to regions where there is plenty of feed available. As I said, we have got wild horses today. We've got the zebra, 3 species of zebra. We've got the wild ass. We've got Przewalski's horse. Now, was someone going to hook me into the internet? Someone telephoned. Internet connection? No? I have no password or internet connection. Yeah. So if we can just connect to the internet. Okay. So they're very stress sensitive, they're aggressive to man, but they have a huge home range, 300 to 3,000 hectares. They're constantly on the move looking for areas of grass. So let's hope this will work. We're going to just look at some of the wild horse behavior. Just a short clip. Look at the terrain of wild mustangs in Australia, in the United States, sorry. So you can see actually some of the behaviors here, just as an aside, which are used in dressage, the piaffing, the pawing behaviors, head nodding. People get upset about some dressage behaviors, but in fact they are used by horses. Bucking. So you can see this typical horse herbivory where there's a lot of dead material here, but also there'll be some good quality grass in between the bushes. And horses typically create that very diverse pasture. They have a characteristic of latrine behavior with the feces, so they will locate their feces in particular areas, latrine behavior, which cattle don't do. Okay. Okay, moving on. Right. So again, there's a strong social order. Stallions fighting for access to a harem. So the basic social structure is a matriarchal group. And olfaction is really important to horses, just as it is to cattle. Those exchange of information by odors rather than, say, a lot of vocal communication. So we've got the homing instinct is using scent to find their home territory. We know that wild horses are difficult to stalk except upwind, so it's demonstrating that their use of smell is very acute. When they meet each other, they will smell each other, and they're very sensitive to smells in their environment. Dirty troughs, musty feed, poor quality water, and some plants. Horses need to learn to avoid eating toxic plants. I mentioned ragwort the other day, bright yellow flowers. They need to learn to avoid that. If you feed them hay, which has got ragwort in it, they may well become poisoned. So smell is very important in feed selection for both horses and cattle and sheep. And in fact, if you look at the vision of those animals, they are probably not selecting their pasture based on what they can see, because if we take cattle for instance, they have two eyes, but they're right on the side of their head. Their stereopsis, or their binocular vision, is quite limited immediately in front of them. Now if you hold your finger here, there's a point in time at which you lose stereopsis. For me, it's about here. My eyes are old and worn out. It's about here. So if I'm taking a piece of food very close to my mouth, I can't see exactly what I'm eating. For horses and cattle, that's going to be out here somewhere. So when they're grazing down on the pasture, they're not selecting their pasture based on what they can see, but on what they can smell. So they will select the plants which are darker green, lush pastures. A darker green indicates more nitrogen in the feed, and lusher pastures, and they do that by smelling it. Okay, gustation or taste. Again, sweetness is very important. We all need energy. Animals need energy, and so horses, they love to be given those juicy carrots which have lots of soluble sugars in them. They'll reject salty, sour and bitter tastes, just like humans do. And then they have the perception of sodium in the feed as well. Not quite as adept as cattle, I would believe, but there is a special case, of course, that the horses that are used for racing, lose a lot of sodium in the race, and they need to replenish their salts regularly after the race, and we can actually train them to accept high levels of electrolyte to make sure that they don't get sick from lack of sodium. Their grazing behavior is pretty different to cattle. They have very malleable mouth parts. Their lips are very malleable, so they are selecting pasture plants by touch as well as by smell. Compared with the tongue in cattle, you remember I said that the cattle wrap their tongue around the grass, jerk their head backwards, and rip the grass from the sward. And sheep, of course, selecting individual plants by their teeth. So they will preferentially select out clovers in a grass clover sward, for instance. So with horses, patch selection is very evident. They will maintain some bits of grass in short condition. They easily get too fat, as I'm sure you know, and so they can maintain that high quality grass. Why the high quality grass? Well, cattle, of course, are able to consume and digest that very low quality pasture. Horses can't do it. They need that high quality grass with soluble carbohydrates rather than the very low quality grass. So the danger of overfeeding, and the grass needs to be short. And so we tend to get that diverse flora. Some landowners, they don't like putting horses on their pasture because it looks a mess. If you put cattle onto your pasture, when they graze it, they act like a mowing machine, and they're moving forwards all the time, and their head is going like this, and they're grazing a strip of grass, and they all overlap, so they neatly take the strips of grass together, and you end up with a nice clean sward, which looks very pleasant if you're a landowner. But if you have horses, then it looks a mess. You've got tall grass, you've got short grass. And then we've got problems of colic, with the horses losing their appetite, anorexia, again related to that consumption of high levels of sugar, soluble carbohydrates, too much soluble carbohydrates. And I've said that the horse needs soluble carbohydrate, but we can go way too far. And one of the problems with the stabled horse in particular is that we feed it too concentrated a diet. We feed too much grain with starch, which is readily soluble in the digestive tract. We don't feed enough hay, and the hay should be fed in a net so that the horse is eating upwards and not eating from the floor. So we get problems developing. Now, with stable-fed horses, we'll forget the locomotive disorders. We briefly considered those yesterday, generally indicating that we're not giving the horses enough space to walk around these are, as I said, they're fleeing animals, they're long-distance runners. We put them in a little box which is 3 meters by 3 meters, and we wonder why they start weaving backwards and forwards and walking around the stall, so-called box walking or stall walking, and also pawing behavior. They will use their front feet to paw at the door, which is a natural behavior. When they're in the snow, they will paw the ground to expose grasses. But what I want to concentrate on briefly are the oral stereotypies. When we feed them incorrectly, we get problems such as here, crib biting, which is biting the bars of their pen, or nodding, head shaking. They'll stand at the front of their pen just nodding their head for hours on end. Wind sucking is a bit like crib biting, but instead of biting the pen, the wood on the pen, and doing sometimes a lot of damage, they will just aspirate. They will take in air repeatedly through the mouth. and then we have wood chewing as well. And animals that do this have low value. So you usually have to declare this when you're selling a horse, and it has devalued the animal. So the problems are that the housing is not good, there's not enough social contact, because horses engage in social facilitation just like other animals. And the feed type, not enough roughage, and straw bedding, again, an inadequacy of straw bedding, because that will act as roughage. Are we okay to finish on horses before we take lunch, Dr. Prasenjit? Another 3 or 4 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, we'll finish horses. It would make sense to complete a species, if that's all right. Okay, so pawing behavior, natural uncovering food in the snow, also pawing the foal to stimulate it. That's not so much feed related. Cribbing is grasping a horizontal surface and flexing the neck and breathing into the pharynx. Occurs in about 2.5 to 5% of thoroughbred horses. And then the adaptation I mentioned, wind sucking. So that's quite a serious downgrading of the horse. You can use a collar to try and stop them doing it, but generally the horse is trying to tell us something, that it hasn't got the facilities that it likes, and so it's not a good idea. There are operations which you can do to stop it cribbing as well. So it makes it the collar makes it difficult for the horse to take in the air by constricting the airways. And here we can see the damage done to rails of a paddock by horses that are chewing wood. Okay, well, right, we finished horses. We'll move on to sheep after lunch. Does anyone have any questions about horses? Any thoughts about horses?
They'd like a translation of the cattle sector.
The cattle, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
When we finished, is that,
No, he said
or now?
The rest can go for lunch. And
Right.
just
That's what
take 10 minutes.
that's what Kushpu did yesterday. If that's all right.
Is it okay, sir?
Yes, of course.
Good.
I have a generic question, of course, you can answer that later. Now, how do you design a feeding program? Again, I'm looking at it from the quantitative point of view.
Right.
So if I say that I need to design a feeding program, are there set rules? It of course will depend on the species, but that's okay. Some generic thoughts on that.
Yeah.
You can do it at the end of the...
Okay, well, it's probably best covered now because it relates most to cattle, I think. I mean, we will, in our penultimate session, we'll look at designing a feeding program. But I must emphasize, with the cow, we have put her into a very difficult position because our our rationing programs want to feed very high levels of energy so that we can get high milk yields from the cow, but that is contrary to her evolutionary environment, how she developed to consume low quality forages. So it's a real dilemma how to feed the cow for welfare versus how to feed the cow for production. It's a real problem. Yeah. And a little bit the same with horses, I think. Horses that are used for racing are using a lot of energy. You know, when they go out on the gallop every day, they're using a lot of energy. So again, there's a temptation to feed them a very concentrated diet, potentially leading to colic. So, and some of those behavioral problems I mentioned. Good. So we'll take a little bit of lunch. And you two, do you want to use this the mic?
Well, I think there's 3 of them, right? I think
Yes.
they're fine. Aap theek hai.
But it'd be good if yours. It'd be good if yours is recorded.
Oh, okay.
if that's okay.
तो पहले तो उन्होंने एक मिनट उनके लिए वेट करना है।
मैं शिमला में एक पहाड़ वहाँ की लोकल ब्रीड है पहाड़ी,
हाँ,
उस पर काम कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा
वैसे एक्चुअली मैं फार्मर नहीं हूँ,
अच्छा
बिजनेस कंपनी जो बिजनेस से तय होता है
अच्छा
पहाड़ी कोऑपरेटिव एंड रिसर्च सेंटर के नाम से काम करता हूँ
अच्छा ओके
शिमला।
शिमला में ओके तो यहाँ पे सिर्फ कोर्स के लिए आए हैं?
इसी कोर्स के लिए
अच्छा
जनरली तो जानता नहीं हूँ इस चीज़ के बारे में,
हाँ।
बिजनेस कम्युनिटी से हूँ,
हाँ
तो इस तरीके से कुछ
बराबर हाँ ओके ओके तो पहले तो उन्होंने थोड़ा जो गाय की ओरिजिनल जो कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स थी जो वाइल्ड में फॉरेस्ट में जब रह रहे थे उसकी थोड़ी बात की। तो बोले कि गाय जो है वो ग्रेजिंग भी करते मतलब घास भी खाते और ब्राउजिंग भी करते मतलब पेड़ में से लीव्स खाते और प्लांट्स भी खाते हैं। दिन के बीच वाले जो घंटे होते हैं जो वो शेड में जाके आराम करते हैं और तभी रूमिनेशन होता है, तभी जो सुबह जो खाया है वो डाइजेस्ट करते हैं। गाय जो है वो सोशल स्पीशीज़ है मतलब वो ग्रुप में रहना चाहती है, अकेले वो थोड़ा स्ट्रेस हो जाती है। और बहुत रिसर्च किया है दुनिया भर में, जो जब ग्रुप में रखते हैं तो ज़्यादा खाती है, जब इंडिविजुअल देते हैं तब कम खाती है गाय, और आइसोलेशन में स्ट्रेस हो जाती है। ऑल्सो जो है कि उनका जो हर्ड होता है उसमें हायरार्की मतलब ऑर्डर होता है, जो लीडर्स होते हैं और फिर फॉलोअर्स होते हैं। तो लीडर्स बीच में जाके पहले नया घास खाते हैं और फिर वो नई जगह पे जाते हैं और फॉलोअर्स जो है दूसरी गायों जो है हाँ उसके पीछे जाते हैं, और वैसे ही उन लोग को ग्रेज करना अच्छा लगता है। अगर वो ऑर्डर बदल गया, नए एनिमल्स आ गए तो वो लोग स्ट्रेस हो जाते हैं। फिर कम्युनिकेशन, उन लोग का जो एक आपस में जो बात कम्युनिकेशन जो करते हैं वो लाउड नहीं होता है, क्योंकि वो एक्चुअली जो है प्रे एनिमल्स है, फॉरेस्ट में रहते हैं। प्रे एनिमल्स मतलब दूसरे एनिमल्स उनके ऊपर शिकार करते हैं, अटैक करते हैं, तो इसलिए उनका कम्युनिकेशन फेरोमोन से होता है, जो स्मेल हाँ साइलेंट होता है। और बहुत वो लोग फेरोमोन्स जो सिक्रीट करते हैं उन स्मेल से करते हैं बात। हाँ हाँ वो भी करते हैं।
कुछ थोड़ा जोर से, जैसे हम सांस बाहर निकाल रहे हैं,
हाँ हाँ थोड़ा हाँ बराबर। मेल फीमेल में जो उनका जो शरीर होता है वो अलग होता है, मेल बड़े होते हैं, फीमेल। और वो जो है हॉर्सेस से अलग है, वो हाइडर्स होते हैं। जैसे कि अगर कोई शिकारी एनिमल आ गया पास में, तो जो काव्स होते हैं, छोटे बच्चे होते हैं, वो बीच में छिप जाते हैं और एक गार्ड होता है, मतलब एक जो मदर काव होती है वो गार्ड करती है। ये उनका नेचुरल बिहेवियर है। टेस्ट, उनका 4 टेस्ट होते हैं। नमकीन जो सोडियम के लिए होता है, स्वीट मीठा जो एनर्जी के लिए वो लोग करते हैं, एसिड वो लोग टेस्ट करते हैं क्योंकि रूमेन में जो एसिड और बेस का बैलेंस है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसलिए उन लोग को एसिड का टेस्ट हाँ बहुत ज़रूरी है। और बिटर मतलब कड़वा टेस्ट कर सकते हैं क्योंकि बहुत सारे जो पॉइजन्स होते हैं, टॉक्सिन्स होते हैं, वो कड़वे होते हैं, इसलिए ये 4 टेस्ट उन लोग के पास है। और हमसे थोड़ा डिफरेंस है, ताकि हम लोग स्वीट टंग के आगे टेस्ट करते हैं, वो लोग पीछे टेस्ट करते हैं, ऐसे थोड़े थोड़े डिफरेंसेस होते हैं। और फिर वो लोग खाने में जो न्यूट्रिएंट्स है, कितना एनर्जी है, कितना प्रोटीन है, कितना सोडियम है, वो डिटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। उन लोग को मालूम पड़ता है कि ये फीड में इतना ज़्यादा एनर्जी है या कम एनर्जी है, वो लोग डिटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। पीबी मतलब लेड जो टॉक्सिन होता है, वो भी उन लोग को पता चलता है टेस्ट से। और परसेप्शन है जो वो रिलेटिव है, मतलब उनको अगर बहुत ज़्यादा आप स्वीट खाना देते हैं तो उन लोग का स्वीट परसेप्शन थोड़ा कम हो जाता है। जैसे कि हम लोग भी आदत पड़ जाती है कि स्वीट खाने के, फिर हम लोग को कुछ स्वीट दे दो तो बहुत स्वीट नहीं लगता है, वो लोग भी ऐसे है। इसलिए आप कंडीशन कर सकते हैं, जैसे कि प्रेगनेंसी में अगर आप बहुत ज़्यादा सोडियम दो तो अंदर जो बच्चा है उसको मालूम पड़ जाता है कि इतना सोडियम लेना चाहिए, तो आप कंडीशन कर सकते हो कि जब बच्चा पैदा हो जाएगा उसको भी मालूम पड़ेगा कि इतना सोडियम मुझे चाहिए। लेमनेस मतलब लंगड़ापन, वो बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है और न्यूट्रिशन से मतलब खाने से बहुत रिलेटेड है। लेमनेस बहुत लोगों को लगता है कि लेमनेस है जो वो मडी कंडीशन जो होता है, बहुत गीलापन होता है, उससे आता है, लेकिन उन्होंने बोला कि एक्चुअली पहले से वो मडी कंडीशन बहुत अच्छा टॉलरेट कर सकते हैं, स्पेशली हमारी जो इंडिया में ब्रीड्स है या एशिया में ब्रीड्स है। लेमनेस इधर जो आता है वो न्यूट्रिशन से आता है, खाने में कोई डिफिशिएंसी हो उससे आता है। बिग रीज़न इज़ रॉन्ग डाइट। जब डाइट रॉन्ग हो तभी वो लोग लंगड़े हो जाते हैं। और यहाँ पे भी होता होगा, लोकोमोशन स्कोरिंग ऐसा चार्ट बनाते हैं, और 1 मतलब टोटली नॉर्मल, 5 मतलब बहुत लंगड़ा, और स्कोर जो है अडक्शन मतलब पैर कितना बाहर और अंदर जा सकता है, टेंडरनेस ऑफ फीट मतलब कितना पेन होता है, बिहेवियर मतलब कितना खाते हैं, कितना सोशलाइज करते हैं, वो सब, टर्निंग में कितना उन लोग को तकलीफ होती है, और कितनी आसानी से वो लोग उठ सकते हैं, बैठ सकते हैं और चल सकते हैं। मतलब ये सब वो लोग असेस करके ऐसा स्कोरिंग चार्ट बनाते हैं। हाँ, ये जो है सिर्फ एग्जाम्पल है कि 3 महीना लगता है लेमनेस को जाने के लिए, मतलब जो 0 जो टाइम है वहाँ पर अगर कुछ इंसल्ट हो गया, कुछ इंजरी हो गया, कुछ लग गया, तो उसके 3 महीने के बाद लेमनेस नीचे आता है और उसका जो गेट है, चलने का तरीका है, वो नॉर्मल होता है 3 महीने के लिए, मतलब बहुत लंबा चलता है। अलग तरीके के लेमनेस होते हैं, जैसे कि सोल अल्सर, वाइट लाइट लीजन, लेकिन इन सब में से लैमिनाइटिस जो लास्ट वाला है वही डाइट रिलेटेड है, मतलब खाने में जो, हाँ खाने से, बाकी सब है जो अलग कंडीशंस। हाँ, यहाँ पे बताया है कि लैमिनाइटिस एग्जैक्टली कैसे होता है, वो शायद आपको मालूम है कि एग्जैक्टली पैर में क्या होता है। उन्होंने बताया कि पैर ऐसे टर्न हो जाता है पहले, मतलब पीछे वेट आता है, बहुत वेट आता है, और वहाँ पे वेट आता है तो ये जो लाइन है, इन कोरियम और बार के जो बीच में जो लाइन है वो सेपरेट हो जाती है, क्योंकि वो एक्सेस वेट पीछे आता है, और वो बहुत पेनफुल कंडीशन होता है। और जब लैमिनाइटिस होता है तब ज़्यादातर पीछे होता है, इसलिए पूरा वेट आगे हो जाता है, इसलिए ये जो आर्च्ड बैक है वो दिखाई देता है, तो मालूम पड़ता है कि पीछे के पैर में लैमिनाइटिस हो गया है।
पीछे के पैर में होगा,
ज़्यादातर पीछे के, ज़्यादातर उन्होंने बोला कि पीछे, हाँ फ्रंट में कोई और रीज़न होगा। हाँ, लेकिन लैमेनाइटिस उन्होंने बोला कि ज़्यादातर पीछे होता है। फीड लॉट्स तो यहाँ पे होते नहीं है, फीड लॉट्स एक्चुअली बीफ कैटल के लिए होते हैं, लेकिन फीड लॉट के जो वेलफेयर प्रॉब्लम्स है, जैसे कि हीट स्ट्रेस होता है, बहुत गर्मी हो जाती है उससे स्ट्रेस होता है, फिर ड्रेनेज का प्रॉब्लम होता है, वो सब सेम प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे भी है इंटेंसिव इंडस्ट्री में। जब गाय को एक शेड में ऐसे रखा जाता है, जैसे गौशाला में, हाँ, और बहुत पास में जब रखा जाता है, जब वो गोबर बहुत सूख जाता है तभी डस्ट होता है, फिर वो लोग नाक में डस्ट नाक में जाता है और रेस्पिरेटरी प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं, मक्खी का बहुत प्रॉब्लम होता है क्योंकि इतनी सारी गाय एकदम एक शेड में रखी जाती है, बुलर स्टीयर सिंड्रोम पता नहीं, और रेस्पिरेटरी डिजीज़ होता है। मतलब सेम प्रॉब्लम्स जो यहाँ पे है वहाँ पे ऐसे फीड लॉट्स में होते हैं। ये आई थिंक उन्होंने कल भी थोड़ा कवर किया था। रेंज लैंड मतलब जो फ्री रोमिंग कैटल होते हैं, जो बाहर घास चरने के लिए जाते हैं, उन लोग के जो वेलफेयर प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं, ज़्यादातर फीड अवेलेबिलिटी, मतलब घास एडिक्वेट घास नहीं होता है, खाने के लिए नहीं होता है जब बारिश नहीं पड़ता है या ऐसा कुछ। एक्टोपैरासाइट्स मतलब मक्खी या दूसरे कोई पैरासाइट्स, जो स्किन पैरासाइट्स जो होते हैं, बाकी की डिजीज़। ट्रांसपोर्ट यहाँ पे ट्रांसपोर्ट बहुत करते हैं, कैटल को बहुत नहीं करते, हाँ, और रूटीन ऑपरेशन जैसे कि एयर टैग और वहाँ पे ब्रांडिंग करते हैं, वो सब जो यहाँ पे पता नहीं करते हैं कि नहीं। डीहॉर्निंग करते हैं, हाँ,
भी बहुत लोग करवा रहे हैं, पर वैसे वो भी
कम है, लेकिन वो स्पेशली यहाँ पे शायद पेन मेडिकेशन नहीं दिया जाता होगा, तो बहुत वेलफेयर का प्रॉब्लम है क्योंकि ये सब बहुत पेनफुल ऑपरेशंस है। एक जो बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है वो है मतलब जब बच्चा पैदा होता है उसको अलग करते हैं, और बहुत NGOs है जो ये प्रॉब्लम को बहुत ज़्यादा समझते हैं कि बच्चे और माँ को सेपरेट करते हैं तो बहुत स्ट्रेस होता है माँ को भी और बच्चे को भी। तो उसका क्या सल्यूशन है, क्योंकि हम लोग को भी दूध चाहिए और बच्चे को माँ के साथ रखना है, वो एक बहुत ही सीरियस प्रॉब्लम है। क्या सल्यूशन है? वहाँ पे तो इमीडिएटली सेपरेट करते हैं।
क्या करते हैं कि ग्रेजिंग के लिए जैसे 2-3 घंटे छोड़ा है तो बच्चे को लंबी रस्सी से बांध दिया और उसको अलग रखा या पकड़ कर रखा और गाय ग्रेजिंग कर रही है, या बहुत ज्यादा है तो फिर उसको कॉल शेड में रखा बच्चे को और वो ग्रेजिंग के लिए छोड़ दिया। ये दो
बराबर, हाँ। एक्चुअली यहाँ पे पता नहीं मशीन मिल्किंग बहुत नहीं होता होगा, हाथ से ही करते हैं तो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। उधर मशीन मिल्किंग करते हैं इसलिए वो लोग बच्चे को रख ही नहीं सकते साथ में, क्योंकि अगर बच्चा सक्कल करने लगे तो वो पूरा जो अडर है वो ड्रॉप हो जाता है और फिर मशीन उसको पकड़ नहीं सकता है, इसलिए बच्चे को इमीडिएटली वो लोग अलग कर देते हैं। यहाँ पे मैंने देखा है कि एक टीट वो बच्चे के लिए सेव करते हैं और बाकी में से मिल्किंग करते हैं, तो वो एक सोल्यूशन है। एक्चुअली आप क्लाइव को बता सकते हैं कि हम लोग ऐसे करते हैं यहाँ पे, उनको शायद इंटरेस्ट होगा कि वो एक सोल्यूशन है। हाँ,
ये
सेपरेशन ऑफ वीनिंग मतलब बच्चे को अलग लेना। ये शायद कवर नहीं किया है ना?
ये कल बताया।
हाँ, ओके, इसलिए आज नहीं हॉर्स, हाँ हाँ, ये भी कल। अलग तरीके के फीडिंग बैरियर्स जो आई थिंक यहाँ पे नहीं होते हैं, ऐसे फीडिंग नहीं करते हैं। हाँ,
या वो खुरली कहते हैं उसको, उसमें डालते हैं।
हाँ, बराबर। फीडिंग बैरियर्स रखते हैं उन्होंने बोला क्योंकि वेस्टेज नहीं होता है, क्योंकि अगर वो वहाँ से लेके टर्न हो जाते हैं तो थोड़ा फीड ड्रॉप हो जाता है। अगर आप बैरियर रखते हैं तो वहाँ पे ही खाना पड़ता है और ड्रॉप होता है तो वापस अंदर ट्रॉफ में जाता है। उत्तरा, हाँ। सॉरी मेरा हिंदी बहुत खराब है।